Hello and welcome to the March 26th edition of the Bubb Report. I am the Bubb Report's assistant producer, Rion Charles. This week on our program, Grenada's lone professional organization for legal practitioners has finally broken its silence on the proposed data protection bill piloted before the Grenadian Senate on March 29th. Legal Affairs Minister Senator Claudette Joseph, in an appearance on her party's weekly radio program, rubbished any suggestion that the bill would infringe on the fundamental rights and freedoms of the citizen, despite a warning from Dr. Francis Alexis that the bill has the potential to be weaponized against political opponents.
You can trust me when I say that the data protection bill is for your protection, as
it says.
The title suggests, and that there really is no merit to the concerns raised, and I say so very, very respectfully, bearing in mind that some of the people who might have raised concerns.
The chief executive officer of the commission, in any event, the idea that not only the commission itself, but the chief executive officer may delegate any power or function under this act to an authorized officer must be an abuse of power by Parliament. That clause needs surgery, if not elimination.
Also on the report, we spotlight the ongoing crime wave in St. Lucia. Earlier this month, the St. Lucia government was forced to close all schools in the southern town of Viewfort after 3 people were shot and killed, and a 9-year-old boy was injured as a result of gun violence. The latest gun violence upsurge in the south of the island has been linked to continuing rival gang activity. Media reports say residents in the southern town are bracing for more violence. In 2022, St. Lucia recorded 24 murders. St. Lucia's homicide rate stands at 40 per 100,000 people. This places it among fellow Caribbean nations, Trinidad and Tobago and Jamaica, in the top 5 countries with the highest homicide rates in Latin America and the Caribbean. We welcome our guests, Osbert Regis, former St. Lucian Commissioner of Police, Derek Sylvester, President of the Grenada Bar Association, Earl Bousquet, editor at the Voice of St. Lucia Publishing Company, and Khalees George Jr., host of the State of the Nation program on Choice TV. Here is our host, Dr. Kellon Bubb, with this week's editorial, The State of Road Safety in Grenada and the Caribbean. We thank you for joining us.
A pleasant good morning to the viewers and listeners of the Bubb Report. I am your host, Dr. Kellon Bubb. We will get right into the editorial of the week. Now, the lack of road safety in Latin America and the Caribbean results in nearly 130,000 deaths and 6 million injuries per year. The regional road traffic fatality rate stands at 19.2 per 100,000 people, with the number of deaths stabilizing over the last few years as of 2015. However, road deaths have also become the leading cause of death for people between the ages of 15 to 44. Aside from the human cost, each country in the region, including Grenada, which has a significant high road accident rate, also suffers from the economic burden of road traffic injuries, which cost the economies of Caribbean countries anywhere between 3 to 6% of GDP, depending on the country. As the region further develops, it is clear that the lack of road safety is a major developmental obstacle for further reduction of poverty and boosting inclusive growth. While the Global Road Safety Facility and the World Bank have been involved in many road safety successes in the Caribbean, there is far more work to be done to meet the Sustainable Development Goal and the UN Decade for Action goal to have road deaths by 2020. Now, the Global Road Safety Facility and the World Bank stand ready to support any country in the region with a desire to decrease road traffic fatalities, injuries, and economic costs. There are important steps that need to be taken to improve the safety of road infrastructure in the Caribbean in a substantial and sustainable way. First, the high risk roads on the regional road network must be surveyed and assessed via road safety audits. Road safety surveys or other forms of recognized infrastructure safety assessments that can help identify the gaps and the respective solutions. Secondly, road safety officials in each country need to be trained and in turn train others to the local level to design and implement safe infrastructure engineering solutions. Knowledge sharing, such as the effective dissemination of best practice manuals for road safety infrastructure design and management, is also essential. Thirdly, creating the political will and dedicated funding to improve road infrastructure safety will be paramount. The recommendations made from road safety infrastructure assessments must be funded and implemented in order to see concrete results. Significant improvements in the infrastructure of safety often represent the low hanging fruit for reducing road accidents significantly and quickly. Education is also critical for creating sustainable changes in road user behavior. Marketing and awareness campaigns are also essential to awaken the sense of urgency and mold a new cultural outlook towards road safety. Mandatory and well designed and implemented driver and trucker licensing systems based on international best practice are also vital in improving road user behavior and creating a system of rights and accountabilities. Police training, even more critical, the procurement of enforcement related equipment, and a package of incentives to lessen corruption on compliance of road safety risk factors is also an important side of the equation. And finally, technologies that can be incorporated into vehicles or onto the larger system to prevent or discourage drunk driving, speeding, lack of seatbelt use, and other measures are also crucial. And now, before we get to the first segment of today's program, the government of Grenada recently published a press release detailing a meeting they held with the Media Workers Association of Grenada to ostensibly discuss the draft data protection bill and other matters. The first time many members of the Media Association heard about this meeting was through this press release. I advance that this was wholly inappropriate for the association to have a meeting with the Prime Minister of Grenada without informing its general members. Secondly, while I am aware that MWAG is still consulting on the data protection bill, it was proper to publish a public statement detailing that a meeting was held in the first place so that there are no mistakes with respect to public perception of the role of MWAG as an independent organization. And at this time, viewers and listeners, we are going to tee up the interview that we did with our first guest for this week. It was a pre-recorded conversation, and that interview now would be with Mr. Derek Sylvester, who has responded to the draft data protection bill on behalf of the Grenada Bar Association. So we will tee up this interview, and then we would get back with the panel segment of the week to discuss the state of crime over in St. Lucia. So here is that interview now. Listeners, at this time we are joined by Mr. Derek Sylvester. He's the author of the autobiography Trials of a Lawyer. The book traces the journey of Derek Sylvester's life to date and explores the many experiences that have influenced his progression into the lawyer we see today. But today we will be touching base on the draft data protection bill that it's currently making its way through the legislative ringer in Grenada. At this point, I wish to welcome our first guest for this week's episode of the Bubb Report, Mr. Derek Sylvester. But for full disclosure, we also did invite Attorney General Claudette Joseph to offer a response on this matter. No response has been forthcoming. Now, Mr. Sylvester, it has been a long time coming in respect of your appearance on the Bubb Report. So after almost 3 years of trying to get you, we certainly welcome you to the platform for the very first time.
Thank you, Dr. Bubb, and thank you for having me. I believe in the old adage that everything happens at the right moments, and I believe this is the right time. But you're so correct that this has been long in coming.
Absolutely, and of course, we are both fellow Saint Davidians, so it's good to see that you're doing great work as a son of Saint David's. So, Mr. Sylvester, we will get into it. Let us talk about the genesis of the draft data protection bill. Now, the current administration's position is that the draft of the bill was approved by the previous government. At least that's the final draft, was approved in 2021 following consultations. Now, let us tee up what the current Attorney General and Minister of Legal Affairs says about this in this clip.
Exactly. 12 years.
Yeah, it was just a lot of politicking in the
Well,
parliament.
that was the excitement.
Yes, a lot of politicking, not genuine, because the draft was a draft that was completed in 2021. Started since 2011, sat on
And
it.
finished in
what, 12 years?
21.
2021. After there would have been consultations and whatnot, approved by the cabinet in March 2022. Let me repeat that for the public. This bill went to the cabinet, the former cabinet, as part of the process towards on the road to Parliament, and it was approved by the then cabinet in March 2022. When we came in, we met it there already approved by the cabinet.
So that is just 3 months
Right.
before the
The
elections.
election.
Yeah.
We made some refinement, some small changes and so, and this cabinet approved it to take it to the parliament, because that's usually a bill approved by the cabinet go to parliament.
Yeah.
So they were well and truly ready to take the same
Yeah. Bill.
bill to the parliament. That's why I am confident in saying there's
what was
no-
the hoorah and the hypocrisy?
Well,
I'm going to ignore that last part about the hoorah and hypocrisy. But Mr. Sylvester, was there any consultation on this bill with either the current administration or the previous administration, as the Attorney General just intimated?
Let me indicate to you first, it's important to note that the Grenada Bar Association, we have no difficulty with the Data Protection Act. We have no difficulty with that. We believe that it is necessary at this time. However, when this bill was brought to my attention, the first time that I saw the bill was when one of our local journalists forwarded the bill to me, and the second journalist forwarded that bill to me. Thereafter, I've been receiving numerous calls from other attorneys who indicated to me that Mr. Sylvester is president. What are you doing in relation to this bill? And I indicated to them that I cannot make a singular decision in relation to this bill. And thereafter, I decided that it was prudent to meet with the executive, and the executive decided that we should call an extraordinary meeting, wherein we give our members 7 days notice, as is constitutionally required. That was done, and the 23rd of March at 3:30, we met. I must indicate to you that this is my second term as president of the Grenada Bar Association. My first term started in January 2022, and my second term continued in January 2023. I do not recall, it doesn't fall within the ambit of my memory, seeing that bill, and I haven't seen it before. The first time I saw it, as I indicated prior, was when it was sent to me by a journalist. They may have had consultation, but not with the bar as far as I'm aware.
Not with the bar as far as you're aware. Okay, now the minister seemed to be saying here that there might not have been a need for these consultations since these consultations were held. Now, as the bill went into the committee process in the lower house on the 14th of March, Mr. Sylvester, it would appear as if they made some changes to the legislation in respect of, I believe that's Part 5, Section 24, subsection 2, in which the proposed change now says that the Governor General would appoint the commissioners on the advice of the Prime Minister in consultation with the leader of the opposition. What does this do, Mr. Sylvester, for assuaging the concerns of citizens who felt that ministers will be getting much more for subjectively appointing people to the commission, the Information Commission?
Well, first, what I can indicate to you, even before I answer that question, is that in the past, the practice has been that all bills will be forwarded to the Grenada Bar Association, and we give forward our comments from our members to the Attorney General Chamber. So I think it's important to put that out there. And I would request that that practice continues. I've since spoken to the Attorney General, and she has given me her commitment that, of course, that is going to happen. So I trust that is going to happen.
Did she say why this did not happen in this case?
No, I didn't make any inquiries in relation to that either. But
okay.
I'm hoping that going forward, those bills will be forwarded to us, and solely for the purpose of getting the views from other members, because some things that the bar may see, maybe the executive may not see it. So we're not directing the executive in any way. All we would like to do is just have a valid input into any legislation that may affect the citizenry, because we believe we have that overall societal and legal responsibility, and we do not want to fail in that that duty. In relation to the appointment of commissioners, it is important to note, I'm pleased that that is being done, because I could tell you, when I sat as chairman of the Public Service Commission, the Prime Minister, there were 5 commissioners. The Prime Minister appointed 2 persons in his own deliberate judgment. There was 1 person that was appointed after the Prime Minister would have had consultation with the relative trade union and another civil service union, as the case may be, or the civil service. So I think that augurs well, because you would like to have a commission where the perception is that the parties would be fair. Because every commission that you would have, the perception should be that the persons who sit on this commission would be objective. Because you're appointed by a particular body, your mandate should be circumscribed by the statute. Even though you follow the policies and procedures of the state. So for example, the Public Service Commission, despite the fact that we all sat as chairman there, every commission, you should follow the policies of the state, but your functions are mandated by the statute. So you should act within the confines of the statute.
Okay. Now, other concerns that journalists had, although there are carve-outs there in the legislation for journalists, that has to be said as well, except the operational definition of a journalist in the case of Grenada, I do not think has been subject to proper scrutiny. Who determines who is a journalist in this context? But journalists like myself were obviously concerned about warrants with respect to search and entry, and warrants with respect to searching all of your personal data that's on your premises, and searching anyone who might be on the premises as well. That has been a concern raised as well. Do you also share that concern?
Well, because I don't speak for myself, I speak on behalf
as the bar. Correct,
yes,
as the bar.
That concern was shared by numerous members of the bar, including our constitutional expert, Dr. Alexis. We were of the view that section 33, is just overbroad, and it opens up itself for abuse. So, for example, it also takes away your right to silence, because constitutionally you have a right to remain silent. And when you look at section 33 E and F, it basically says to require any person on the premises to provide an explanation of any document or other material found on the premises, and F, to require any person on the premises to provide other information as may reasonably be required to determine whether the data user has committed the offense. And I'm saying that takes away your right to silence, which is your right under the Constitution to remain silent. But in any event, the warrant to enter and search, it is broad, and it should be circumscribed within certain parameters, because to deprive anyone of their liberty even if ultimately you may have to detain that person, you should do so within certain constitutional strictures. Because the basic tenet of constitutional law is that the liberty of the subject is sacrosanct, that one's liberty should not be deprived that easily, especially when you have criminal sanctions that may follow, as we know the effects of a criminal conviction.
Absolutely, and the other section that that also concerns citizens, and that has to do with due process in respect of your ability to seek recompense against the commission. So, in other words, I'm trying to find the section here.
There's a clause which states that you cannot bring any action against the members of the commission.
Right. You cannot bring it, correct, yes.
I would respectfully submit that, of course, you will not be able to bring an action against the members of the commission, but there should be nothing to preclude you from bringing an action against the commission per se, or the Attorney General, who is the principal legal advisor to the state pursuant to the Criminal Proceedings Act.
Okay.
So I do not see a major issue with bringing an action against them personally, unless there is something over and above, maybe some issues to fraud, some issues to criminality. But in the exercise of your function, once it's being done in accordance with the statute, then no action should be brought against you. It's similarly if you operate on any commission, that if you function within the strictures of the statute, then there should be no action being brought against you. But if there are actions to be brought, it should be brought against the commission per se, and there should be no ouster clauses against bringing an action against the commission if you have to, because you could bring an action against the commission for judicial review as the case may be. And we had some issues in relation to the warrant, because when warrants have been applied for, they've basically been applied for ex parte, meaning in the absence of the other party. So an affidavit is filled out and the relevant documents are brought before a magistrate. So the magistrate is really accepting one side of the story to make a determination as to whether or not to grant that warrant. The other side is not given the opportunity, because normally it's being done in such a way stealthily, so then you would, if there are materials, that you wouldn't hide it away. So one could understand that. But we have to ensure that if that is being done, sufficient and cogent information. In other words, that magistrate should be satisfied beyond a reasonable doubt before a warrant is signed.
Well, the Attorney General, to be fair to the Attorney General, she did indicate that there are due process provisions within the legislation that I also read. Those due process provisions are there. But I was just curious in respect of, for example, the role of the Director of Public Prosecutions in all of this. Shouldn't a DPP be sitting on a commission such as what will be constituted here? Well,
I would respectfully differ, yes, because he is the sole pursuant to our Constitution, Section 71(2)(c). He is the person that's responsible for instituting, undertaking, discontinuing all types of criminal matters. It may be prudent for him not to sit. However, maybe a legal person or maybe someone from his department may sit on the commission, or maybe a legal person, because ultimately the DPP could discontinue any criminal proceedings against anyone.
Okay.
So that's his constitutional function. So I believe if he is involved, that may somehow muzzle that function, that constitutional function that he has. Because if he's a part of the commission or part of the commission, then who oversees whether or not there's abuse or whether or not a matter should be discontinued, as the case may be.
Mm-hmm. And two final questions, because I want to respect your time. What other concerns did the Bar Association have in respect of this legislation that we have not addressed on the Bubb Report?
Well, the definition for authorized personnel, they have the view that it is, that it is overbroad and it should be specifically circumscribed. That's one. And generally, they have the view that regulation should be passed together with the Act, because the Act speaks to regulation. And many times in our jurisdiction, we have laws that have been passed and there are no regulations. So we have the view that you should have statutory rules and orders that would guide the process and the procedures via which whatever has to be done under the Act is properly circumscribed. So these were the major issues that were addressed at that meeting.
Now, have you since telegraphed those concerns to the Attorney General and Minister of Legal Affairs, and what has been her response?
We're in the process of doing that because we're collecting data from other attorneys, because we had 45 attorneys online, and there are some attorneys who didn't want to express their position vocally, but they did so to me privately, and there were others who would do so via email. So not every one of the 45 who participated vocally via the Zoom platform. But we'll be collecting all the data, and we'll be trying to send it out to the Attorney General as soon as.
Well, yes, because that bill is going before the Senate, I believe, on Wednesday of this week. Well, it will be this week by the time this program is aired. Yeah.
But even if a bill is passed, it could be amended. Certain things
could be amended. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, Mr. Sylvester, is there anything else you wish to add before we get to the next segment?
Well, that's all. I believe you covered everything else, and thank you for inviting me. And this is the first time on the program, and it's indeed a pleasure to be with you.
Absolutely. I hope to have you back. We have some other things to discuss in respect of your book.
Sure.
You know, you said a lot about St. David's there, so we will talk about that. Yeah.
As you said at the beginning of the program, you're a fellow St. Davidian, and the name of the book is Trials of a Trial Lawyer. You know, I have it here with me. I'm sure you would have seen a copy of it. But it traces my life story from Corinth and everything that I did, including and you'll see a multiplicity of photos, because I always wanted to write, and I knew that time would come when I would write.
You would do that. Excellent. Mr. Sylvester, thank you, and thank you for your service to the Grenada Bar Association and to the national community.
Thank you, Kellen.
Absolutely. Viewers and listeners, Mr. Derek Sylvester, the president of the Grenada Bar Association, who gave us an update with respect to the current data protection bill that will be going before the upper house of Parliament next week. Of course, as we know, while bills are final at that stage, amendments still come up in the legislative process. Sometimes bills that have been passed in previous years comes up for amendments. And it is in the prerogative of the administration, any sitting administration, to bring those amendments and those pieces of legislation before the Parliament. So we will take a quick break and come back with our panel segment of the week. Please stand.
The distinct sound of rapid gunfire would rouse Bunnans Bay residents from their slumber on Sunday night. Those who ventured outside were greeted to the sight of two men lying almost dead in the streets with a motorcycle idling along the roundabout. The grisly double homicide at Bunnans Bay Latok on Sunday, March 19th, around 7:20 p.m., claimed the life of 32-year-old Hospital Road resident Tonio Elithe, alias Zapor, and 53-year-old Montfortune resident Junior Cherubin, alias Raga. First responders say the two men were transported to hospital with negative vital signs and later pronounced dead by a medical practitioner. News Force made attempts to speak to family members of the man known as Raga, but they declined comment. However, the mother of Elite spoke to News Force via telephone.
My son was not a bad person, my girl. He was my king. He was my hero. That's the best child I ever had. The only thing, he wasn't listening to me sometimes, but he wasn't up someone that was getting himself in trouble, because at the end of the day, like I will say, he's friends again. He left home to go and buy groceries, and then he went. The guy told him, "Let's go," and did something I don't know what, and he bought the bike. And as soon as he bought the bike, that was it, Mike.
The grieving mother wants justice.
He wasn't a bad person, Michael. He was a good child to me. Not only to me, his people. Yeah. Everybody have the ups and downs, but yeah, he have his friends. That's the thing, Michael.
Okay.
Pardon? Hold on.
Okay, just can you tell us?
He had to bring me and do an MRI. He had to go and bring me and do an MRI. And look at that today, and he never reached. He killed him. But I tell the people that killed my son, I need justice for my son.
Another relative of the deceased says he was thoughtful to loved ones.
My cousin was the most loving person to us ever. He may have been.
This week's Bubb Report, we have Mr. Calix George, who has been a very good resource for me in the past, but I believe this is his very first appearance on the Bubb Report. Mr. George, thank you for joining us today. It's a pleasure to have you on the program.
Thank you very much. And it's my second time, actually. Dr.
It's actually your second time. I've had so many guests. Thank you so much for that reminder. But you've always been a great resource. Mr. Osbert Regis, who's the former police commissioner of St. Lucia. This is also your second time on the program. And of course, we are going to be discussing the state of crime over in St. Lucia. And my colleague, my comrade in arms, as I call him, Mr. Earl Bousquet, we are comrade in arms with respect to the reparation struggle. Brother Bousquet, I know you're having some internet connection issues, but let us know if you can turn your camera on, if your internet has improved. But gentlemen, I want to begin so that we can contextualize the current state of crime in Grenada. This morning I did, so early saying he can't hear, so definitely we have some connectivity issues there. This morning I did a cursory YouTube search of the different news reports that are coming from St. Lucia. And I will share this so that we can contextualize what is happening in St. Lucia at the moment. And this is on YouTube. So 59-year-old mother of 6 shot dead on Clark Street. That was 2 weeks ago. Man gunned down in Viewfort, 2 others slain. 4 more shot dead in Viewfort turf war 12 days ago. 2 men shot dead 5 days ago. Family of fatally shot man speaks out. Well, that was a month ago. 2 months ago, man shot and killed at burial service at Jack Mill Cemetery. Gun violence on the outskirts of the nation's capital claimed 2 lives on Sunday evening. 2 weeks ago again, 2 males and 1 female dead within an hour period Thursday afternoon in the Viewfort South area. Now, I think the point of this is to just highlight the volume of criminal activity that's occurring. And Mr. George, I want to begin with you as a journalist covering this issue. Is this escalation different from the crime wave that we have seen ordinarily in St. Lucia over the last 5 years?
Thanks very much, Dr. Bubb, for having me on the program.
Yes.
I think over the past 5 years, we have seen the 3 deadliest years or records within the past 5 years. Mm-hmm. I think if you look over the past 5 years, we're probably talking about over 300 and nearly 350 homicides, mm-hmm. yeah, in total. So it is a significant number that we are actually dealing with in St. Lucia. And I would say, yes, to a certain degree, there has by all indications, there has been a significant rise in violent crime, in particular gun-related crime. Mm-hmm. Most people are suggesting that it seems to be very much a sort of a targeted type of crime. But then the danger with that, though, is that we're also seeing quite a lot of what you could effectively call assassinations. These aren't crimes of passion. These are very deliberate execution style types of killings that we're witnessing. And so what you're finding is that even though you have this general locus around the issue of the drugs and narcotics, narco crime, you're seeing that it has also spurned on a sort of a side industry, so to speak, where you have effectively what seems to be gun for hire, individuals who have become, hitmen, and one can in fact decide to know, well, if you don't like somebody, I don't have to deal with it myself. I can, find out who the hitmen are and effectively engage them. So that is making it a very, very dangerous situation. So I would say, yes, certainly it has become exceedingly elevated. We have never seen it this high before. I mean, just to give you a little sense, Dr. Bubb, I'm just looking at some of the figures. In 1996, St. Lucia had 12 homicides. 12. Mm-hmm. In the year 2000, for the entire year 2000, we were at 23. Right, that's the number we are right now, and we're not even quarter way through the year. By say 2010, that number came up considerably. It seemed at that point, 2011, in fact, was about 52 homicides. It sort of peaked around that period. We did see a bit of a decline around 2012 to 2016. And then since then, it's certainly been shooting up. And so the past 2 years have in fact been the bloodiest on record in terms of homicides. 74 is in fact the record number of homicides in 2021. And last year it came down just slightly to 72, marginal change there. So this year already, I mean, if we are to continue, we're at day 85 of 365. For the year 2023. And if we continue at that rate, we would quite likely be touching the century. Not a century that we definitely want to be scoring in this country.
Yeah, and you talk about, and I will bring in Mr. Regis here, former Commissioner of Police. You've heard Mr. George here talk about the nature of the gun violence right now. It appears to be targeted. It appears to be gang related. Would you say that targeted killings, targeted assassinations, the most high profile one that we have had recently in the Caribbean was the targeted assassination of a former Attorney General in the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. Are you seeing a similar pattern now emerging in St. Lucia with the character of targeted killings that we've seen in Trinidad for many years?
Well, I don't want to be that bold to say that compare anything with Trinidad or other countries.
Okay.
I think the question that needs to be asked is why? Why have we moved to that new level? Mm-hmm. What are some of the conditionalities? What are some of the reasons why we have gone that way from the crimes that were associated with the gang and the drugs and other social issues? Why have we gone this way? And it is my opinion, and I state it is my opinion, that we have to look at the justice system as one of the factors. Mm-hmm. If there is no justice, if people have lost confidence in the criminal justice system, then we have a problem. Now, to put that in context, currently, about 76%, I am told, of the inmate population at our correctional facility are remand prisoners. Over 70%. These are persons who have not had a day in court and are presumed innocent. Some persons have been on remand from 3 to 5 years. Other people have been discharged. Now, here's the situation. If people feel that they're not getting justice, or justice in a sort of timely fashion, they resort to alternative justice, Bush justice, their own brand of justice. I can give examples from my own community where persons were one side or one gang, if you want to call it that, were involved in the homicide of another person, live within a quarter mile of each other, if that much. Persons were arrested, placed on remand. They spent 5 years on remand. They were discharged because, the judge at the time felt that, for whatever reason, they were discharged. The relatives of the guy who was killed said it's not going that way, and they engaged the other side. Now, this tit for tat is still going on in my community, in my village. There are other, now that is one example where this caused a homicide. Let me give you another example without naming names, but persons who are familiar with it would know. A particular guy was charged with rape and attempted murder on a female. He was arrested, charged. He spent about 5 years in remand, and he was placed on bail, with bail conditions being that he should not go beyond a particular geographical location. It is reported that her sons have said that the day they run into this guy, they are going to seek justice for their mom. So we have seen this increase because there's a backlog of cases at the magistrates level, at the Supreme Court level. Thousands and thousands of cases, because there have been problems with, at one time, certain courthouses closed because of mold and COVID and whatever it is. And it has gotten worse. So it is my opinion that persons now are not, they have lost confidence in the system, and by extension the police, because the police are the ones who prefer charges. And we are done for that, man. Just pass him out. That is my brand of justice. And as Khalek said, persons would get information as to who is likely to be the perpetrators. I know of one particular family. A member of the family was killed. They're from a small community. Other persons within the community knew who was responsible. They didn't go to the police. That person was killed shortly thereafter. And the family of the person who was killed, the second person who was killed, felt that it was either commissioned or it was supported or endorsed by the family of the person who was killed in the first place. And they went on threatening that family. That family had to pack up and leave. So, we have seen this thing cascade to a very dangerous level. Now, how do you stop it? How do you put an end to it? We need to reboot the system. We need to ensure that we're engaged in a kind of large-scale dispensing of justice, where there should be more magistrates, more judges appointed, and to let those cases, be it on a temporary basis, so that the wheels of justice can be seen to be moving and persons will not. Because one of the things I am very worried about is that this practice can become part of the culture, and then we can't pull it back. So it is a problem. So we need to understand the context that has brought us to where we are at right now.
Okay, very well. Let me bring back Khalees here. There was a meeting in Grenada this week, our regional security system meeting here, and your Prime Minister, Mr. Pierre Philippe J. Pierre, did ask for regional assistance in respect of the spiraling crime there. In fact, he did. RSS officers have begun arriving in St. Lucia as of March 17th. Of course, we have about 32 officers in total from the different member states of CARICOM. But Mr. George, let us talk about the specific hotspots. Are there specific crime hotspots in St. Lucia? For example, I know that View Fort, because View Fort comes up prominently based on the daylight murder that occurred in the street with a woman who was, I believe, going to do an errand, and she was shot. I do not know if it was in crossfire or if that was also a targeted killing. But are we seeing a situation where there is a pattern of criminality with respect to where these crimes are being committed?
Yes, Dr. Bubb. Traditionally, we saw a lot of the violent crime, homicides being associated with the capital, Castries.
And that's Castries, yeah.
Castries, and of course, largest population center, and there were a number of very notable established gangs in that area who were believed to be part of again, the narco networks. But there were a number of social interventions over the period, and we've seen to some degree a sort of a quelling, maybe marginal quelling, one may say, but it seems to have been holding a little bit of peace in terms of Castries. So of course, you're still getting homicides in Castries, but what you have seen recently is that it is in fact being spread to a number of other communities around the country. And I don't even think you can look at any one community and say, well, this is definitely a very, very safe one. So you're seeing all across the island, you will find these flare-ups occurring. For instance, the Roseau Valley, Jacmel area, which is just south of the city, that was a pretty important hotspot for some time for violence, again, because of allegedly warring gangs there. As former Commissioner Regis mentioned, even in Dennery, we've seen some flare-ups there as well. But in VA4, certainly what we've seen recently has been pretty concerning. Now, VA4 is like the second town of second city, so to speak.
I keep saying View Fort, it's VA4, but it's the anglicized. It's the
well, we say View
English.
Fort. We say View Fort too. Some people say View Fort, or some people say VA4, Old Fort in French. And
right.
It is where the important aspect in terms of VA4 is that for a very long time, it has been somewhat underdeveloped. It's largely, in terms of the traditional population, they are connected with the fishing sector. And so that has lent itself, because there appears to be a correlation between that sector and, of course, some of the hotspots that we're seeing, because you're finding, of course, there's transshipments. And Lucia is a critical transshipment point for narcotics at this time, particularly, of course, movement of products coming out of South America, out of Trinidad, heading up the chain. And it's at critical point in terms of getting it into the outermost region of the European Union, that of Martinique. So that relationship in terms of that fishing sector, unfortunately, is there. And we've seen about, at least from what we've been told, about 3 gangs operating within a very small radius of probably not more than a kilometer. And so you have seen some significant friction sometimes between some of these gangs. Now, what occurred, unfortunately, in the case of the last moment was that these individuals were now not just targeting gang members directly, apparently. There were suggestions that they're now beginning to attack or target the family members of these gangs, anybody who may have some sort of association with the individual. And that's, of course, the unfortunate nature that of, that spiral of violence. It then ends up, infecting the broader community now. So you effectively have individuals, just for the sake of maybe being a parent or being a relative of an individual, they now, in fact, have become targets because of our fluid borders. Many of these gang individuals may move from St. Vincent to Martinique. They may not necessarily be able to be found. And so that added significantly to the problem that we're seeing. And so the nature of that type of crime, and in a very brazen way, this was happening in broad daylight during business hours, that caused significant fear within the population. And of course, therefore, for those of you who know, it's a pretty compact area in terms of the town itself, and it caused quite a lot of fear. And of course, so schools decided to close, and a number of businesses also, voluntarily decided to institute their own sort of curfew and decided to close for that weekend because of the fear of what was going on. So it was a very, very uncomfortable situation. It was certainly a very sad, unfortunate situation. And it just goes to show how quickly these areas can spiral out of control, so to speak. And so I think that was really why there had to be a very impactful move by the police, the Royal St. Lucia Police Force. We don't have a defense force or an army here in St. Lucia. There is an SSU unit, a special services unit, but they themselves, their own capacities are probably so stretched in terms of managing a number of these hotspots. And so that's really why it was necessary to try to get some additional support from the regional security system to be able to at least abate, for the time being, the situation, particularly in the community of VA4. In fact, I think, of course, the government brought forward special legislation, and they've now...
That gives police extra powers. I hope, Mr. Regis, and I wanted you to pick up on that as well, but finish your point, please, colleagues, and then I'll get to Mr. Regis.
So and again, it comes to the sensitivity of this situation. A small island like St. Lucia, highly dependent on visitor arrivals, going the route of declaring a state of emergency could send very, very negative tones in terms of the island. And so here you have a fairly isolated, you could say, or concentrated situation. And the government decided, well, let's bring in special legislation to allow for declaration of what is known as an escalated crime area. And so that they can provide certain controls within that area and special powers for the police within that geographic.
So it's like a limited declaration of a state of emergency?
It's sort of crime management, I suppose, a crime management approach without necessarily saying that you're declaring a state of emergency.
But Mr. Regis, I'll pick up on that. Why not declare a state of emergency? I mean, given the current state, and I do get your point about what you're calling, what I would define as sort of a decay of the justice system. Why not declare a full-throated state of emergency to get this under control?
I don't think we've reached that stage. I think everything has to be done based upon the situation at hand. The state of emergency, to my mind, would be the last
resort. Okay,
the last resort. I don't think you've gotten there. But let me just add to what Curly said. You asked when he spoke about crime, the escalation of crime in other areas, moving away from the city. In my experience, that is crime displacement. Yes, you squeeze in one area, and then the other areas flare up. That is why we need, and I have been calling for this, a national approach, a national security plan, measures, so that we deal with things in a holistic way. Yes, not just responding to hotspots or specific situations. But if you have a national plan, then you would deal with things as they. But the indicators were there that because pressure was being put on the gangs in the city, they were moving to areas that were considered better patrolled. And also, there is one of the things we must not lose sight of is that there are the social conditions that give rise to this kind of atmosphere, this kind of environment for what we are seeing here. So we cannot give this thing a law enforcement solution. We can get a relief. What RSS does is to provide a relief. And within that context, we spoke about SSU. Let us not forget that because of things that happened in 2010, 2011, the US had sanctioned the Royal St. Lucia Police Force for almost 10 years, which meant that the SSU received no training along with other RSS members. So that has created a skills deficiency and has really affected the effectiveness of the unit, because for 9 to 10 years, they received no support, no training, nothing from the US. So that has placed them at a place where they ought not to have been at this point in time. So we're talking about, these are some of the things. So we in order to start the healing, we have to stop the bleeding. And that's what we're doing here, to try to arrest situations, to allow the social systems to and the social interventions to take place. Now, you mentioned about the special powers. This is modeled after, is it in the UK, the Crime and Disorder Act, where certain areas are declared special enforcement areas when there were challenges to stop and search powers and things of that sort. So I guess that it is modeled after that. So you localize things, as Curly said, you have to deal with everything else that is going on. So certain areas, based upon conditionalities, the level of crimes reported, the types of crimes, can be declared special enforcement powers, special enforcement areas, and it would give police a bit of a little more flexibility. As to whether that would increase the level of effectiveness and the amount of information you get, that is left to be seen. We're getting a lot of information, but very little evidence, as was indicated after the situation where family members were being targeted. I think the lady is one such, that the story going around is the person told him, if I can't get your son, hold out for your son and pump four bullets in the face. Yes? So you'd find that family members now, in order to protect themselves, are beginning to give information, but information is not evidence. We need to, can the police get the evidence required to convict? But if there is one positive, I'm not sure if it's a positive, but one thing that has come out of this thing here, family members are now can no longer say, boy, I'm not involved in that. That is me and his thing. Because if you do not get involved, you might lose a mother, you might lose a sibling because of the actions of something else. So people are a little less tolerant to persons involved in this area. But we are hoping that, well, of course, there are concerns about the police abuse and all of that. And that, I guess, has to be factored in, and to ensure that the Police Complaints Commission will be vigilant in terms of this thing. But it is, again, another initiative by the government to show that some things are being done to address the situation.
And colleagues, let's also talk. 2 weeks ago, two friends of mine, two colleagues of mine, they were planning a vacation, and they said, "Oh, St. Lucia is really beautiful. Should we still go?" And they said, "Oh, we saw news reports about crime in St. Lucia and whatnot. And is it really that bad?" I said, "Well, I assure you, probably there is a higher risk of dying from a mass shooting incident in the United States than dying in St. Lucia. because sometimes media behaves in manners that are potent for hyperbole, and I do not believe in hyperbole. How has the crime situation affected tourism? Is there reputational damage to St. Lucia's reputation as a safe tourist destination with all of this?
Yeah, certainly, Keelan. I mean, there's always that risk of reputational damage. Thus far, though, there hasn't been any indication of any shift or slide in terms of visitor arrivals or visitor numbers, whether it might be in terms of cruise or in terms of stayover persons. That hasn't shifted at all. And to say as well, I mean, the past, like perhaps every other tourist destination, you have, maybe an occasional situation where a visitor may be mugged, or somebody's trying to steal their jewelry or something. But that is actually, one can say, pretty rare at this point. And it's thankful that we're seeing so. So thus far, I would say that it has not had any negative impact. But of course, it's hard to say because, of course, there's potentially a lag in terms of that response, in terms of individuals, looking at the stories and whatnot. But I mean, in terms of events that are coming up, like significant things like St. Lucia Jazz in May or the Carnival coming up in July, there hasn't appeared to be any waning of interest. I should also point out, while we're speaking about tourism, is the nature of tourism in driving crime as well. It's something that I don't think we always recognize, but quite likely you're going to find that because you have more flights coming in, because you have more yachts coming into your destination, for a drug trafficker or drug trafficking ring, you are more attractive. They're seeing it as more opportunities to have mules. They're seeing it as more opportunities to move product. So it is actually a situation where your successes are unfortunately coming with some negative potential elements as well. So that is adding to the challenge and the context of why St. Lucia is finding itself in this current situation to some degree. The economic activity is to some degree creating some sort of shift towards increasing of that type of activity. But as I said, thus far, not really any impact.
Not any impact. Mr. Regis, we're going to get to some viewer comments, but we have an interesting question here. Are the policemen vetted properly? Because this could be a big problem. Are they being paid reasonably to avoid involvement in the drug trade? Mr. Regis?
Okay, there is a what I would consider a very good vetting process. When you are vetting an 18-year-old, a 19-year-old to join the police force, in most cases, what you're doing is vetting the family. Because I'm a farmer, I like to use the farming analogy. He is just but a bud, yes? He or she has not mushroomed into that full petal, so you can see what color, what smell, what shape. So you were really vetting the family, yes? In terms of salary, the pay that a police officer in St. Lucia receives is very good in comparison to what the colleagues in the region get, considering our cost of living, and even within the local context. But let me say that no amount of salary can prevent corruption. Corruption is about greed, not need. Yes? Because if it were not so, all poor people would be corrupt and rich people would be honest. And in most cases, that's not so. And
I love that analogy. I really love that analogy.
Thank you. When you find politicians who get the most money and the senior police officers and senior customs officers, they make more money than the people at the bottom. And the allegations of corruption remain. So it's about greed. Yes, I think there needs to be more anti-corruption measures put in place, things like polygraph testing and other tests, to ensure that people remain on the straight and narrow. But I believe it's about character. I mean, I was commissioner of police. My salary was the best in the force. And I was not corrupt, not because I had too much money or enough money. It is because of my value system, because of my character. So that is what we need to focus on. And it starts from the school. How do we reboot our society? How do we ensure that the young men and women who are deviant, given the opportunity and the ability to commit crime, will not have the desire to do it? That is where character building, we need to go back to the drawing board. A lot of things we allowed to slip in the name of freedom, rights, but no responsibility. And persons were allowed to do a lot of things. I remember many years ago, a very prominent attorney challenged the school that her son was, and it's well within her right, let me say so, it was within her right, when the school started initiating searches, school bag searches for students. And it was successfully challenged. But what do we have now? What is the end result in that? So as a result, students felt free to come into the schools. And now we have situations where weapons, firearms, and other weapons are found frequently at schools. So sometimes, they say that an avalanche starts with one snowflake and it snowballs down the road. So we need to look at what we have done in the past that have taken us here, and what do we need to do to ensure that we get out of this quagmire that we're at.
Now, a viewer, I'm trying to find the comment. I believe I lost it. However, the theory of the case with the viewer here is that the nature of the drug traffic flows have changed significantly because of greater U.S. enforcement. The transshipment points are now different. It's now shifted to Europe. Are we seeing that, Mr. Regis? I'll start with you and then get Mr. Joyce to respond to that. Are we seeing that? And is the crime in St. Lucia also, because there are several variables that we have to consider here, but would that be one of those variables?
It is one. It may not be the most significant, because now we are at a situation where it is killing, it is revenge killing, right? But it may have been the platform that started off this process. And then we have, again, people are not finding justice, so they're taking their own thing. But yes, it is. I think before my time as commissioner and during my time, we engaged Martinique, the French, and it's still ongoing, where we have a St. Lucia Martinique security committee where we meet on an annual basis, 1 year in Martinique, the other year here, involving the Prime Minister, the Attorney General, Minister for National Security, etc., the police, customs. It is because of the recognition that given our proximity to Martinique, which meant the proximity to the EU, not Europe, EU. Yes, that anytime drugs leave St. Lucia, 1 hour later, it is in Martinique. So essentially, it is in the EU because of the lack of border thing. So that makes it a very attractive thing. We have seen that persons prefer to use the euro as a means of dealing because, one, they are bigger, larger denomination. You can move a million euro in a much smaller package than $1 million US, And also with the change in US policy, at one time they used to fund the larger boats from Grenada all the way to the RSS. They have moved away from that. So you find that we've given smaller vessels, so the drug traffickers have gone into blue waters because we no longer do blue water patrols. So it shifts depending on the dynamics. As I said, it's about displacement. You squeeze one area, another area emerges. So yes, it is a factor. But I don't think, from my own experience, we can see that it brings about that level of crime. Let me just give an interesting point. I'm from Dennery, and especially in the Dennery North. It was a thriving banana community. And when the banana estates went down, one would have thought that the social conditions within that area would have gone down. But what we saw is that we saw greater development. And a very interesting factor is that Western Union, the company, the first outlet that they established outside of the capital was in the middle of a banana field at Richmond, which meant that there was a lot of remittances coming out to the valley, but it was because persons had gone there illegally to work and do other things. So we were having this input of cash. So Western Union felt that they needed to establish an office in a place called Richmond. So it is sometimes, there are different dynamics to it. But that is just the historical factor. What we have faced here now is a situation that cannot be allowed to continue because it is going to mushroom into other areas. So far, it has not affected the tourism. And as a matter of fact, my observation is that you find less petty crimes. Yes? These days, or perhaps it's not reported, than before. But we can't afford to say, oh, well, the fellas are killing each other. As one person suggested, put them at a particular pigeon point and let them blow each other's head off, and the last person, the police shoot them, and then they're all gone. It doesn't work that way. We need to find measures to solve this thing. I was on a Creole show some time ago, and I made a silly suggestion. I said, when we look at different societies where we've had killings because of rivalry, and I cited 3 countries. I said Northern Ireland, the issues they had there between the Catholics and the Protestants. South Africa, in the aftermath of apartheid, the whole thing, and Rwanda after the genocides. There was a coming together, a reconciliation of sorts. Yes, be it has to be structured so that persons will not be denied justice. But we need to come together, bring these communities together. It is ridiculous that persons who grew up together, went to school together, now are at each other's throats because of the location, their location. And it's sometimes 2 blocks from there. 2 blocks from the other location, if you're caught in that area, you're almost getting the kind of development of garrison communities. It cannot be allowed to continue. So whatever we need to do, and it is my view, incidentally, Dr. Triton is down in Vieux Fort. He's doing some work with the SDA church down there, and I have been part of one of his interventions.
Yes, I neglected to reach out to him for this program, but certainly we're going to have him on now. Yeah. Now that I know he's in St. Lucia, I think it would be newsworthy.
So we need to look at, but the state needs to provide bold and courageous leadership in this matter. Yes, and every other thing involving civil society and other non-enforcement measures can be put. We need to have a structured plan to address this issue, or else it is going to mushroom into something that will overwhelm us.
Colleagues, did you want to add to anything that Mr. Regis is saying here? Obviously, he is the law enforcement expert in the room. As a programming note, we also invited Mr. Vanny Cohen of the Royal Grenada Police Force. He gave us a commitment. This is the second time that we're reaching out, and quite frankly, we're not going to do it anymore. because we Grenadians also have some concern over not necessarily an escalation, but a change in a pattern of criminal activity in Grenada that rises to the level of gun violence. But Mr. George, over to you.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Keelan. I think definitely, again, it's that geographic location of St. Lucia, in a way, is what keeps it pretty much in this very heightened position. I mean, if you look at the history of St. Lucia, at one point we were called the daughter of Martinique. And although I don't have any experience in terms of national security, my dad used to be national security minister back in the day when Mr. Regis was around, in fact. And I remember he always related this visit to Martinique, where and in one of those trips, they made a visit to the prison at Ducos. And about a third of the prison population over in Martinique was St. Lucia nationals. And
2/3, and about 75% of them were from the Dennery area.
From the Dennery area. I
got a lot of shouts from them when we went there.
Yeah. So that just gives you a sense as to the activity. And of course, I mean, we can go into a long history of, the collapse of the banana industry and the impact that had on individuals looking for a livelihood, and they turned to, this trade, so to speak, which had been existing illegally. St. Lucia was at one point was a free port in the 1760s when it became French. But coming back to that point, though, another issue that we're facing, and yes, we're seeing the impacts of diaspora, because in as much as we're seeing diaspora doing some pretty great things over in different parts of the world, we're seeing some of the negative networks as well. So there have been a few cases, I think, of St. Lucia nationals being caught trying to export guns from the United States to St. Lucia. The gun issue, I think, is one we have to talk about very, very seriously in the Caribbean. I mean, the United States, there's more, I think it's like about 1.3 guns for every citizen of the United States in terms of legal gun ownership. And we're seeing the impacts of that in a very significant way. And they have to certainly...
And that would be the importation of guns from the United States into the region.
They're coming through barrels, they're coming in containers, they're coming at the back of household appliances. That is a significant impact right now, by all indications. We also do have an issue with Venezuela and the instability there and some of the corruption that's going on. So there is that belief too that some of the guns might very well be coming out of South America as well. But the level of guns that we're seeing on the streets, and I mean, of course, Mr. Regis could speak more to that too, is suggesting that, I mean, in some instances, people are even suggesting that they're military grade guns. So that is certainly something that requires a lot of attention at a regional as well as hemispheric level. And I think as well, the issue of support is another big one. And of course, Mr. Regis also mentioned the challenge, and it cannot be a Royal St. Lucia Police Force. It cannot be a police matter across the board in any part of the Caribbean. There has to be a multidisciplinary, multi-agency approach to crime. The police, unfortunately, are the ones who are always blamed. Yes, they are the ones in the front line, but the front line exists at customs as well. The front line also exists with the schools, when you think about it, because that's where you're finding these very impressionable minds not getting the kind of education that is going to encourage them to get skills and to be model citizens. And we've got to be doing a lot more in that social sphere to be able to make some of those transitions. These are long-term actions. They're actions that people aren't going to see immediately, but social support, even the issue of how the community feels after this sort of instance, and the need for doing debriefing, the need for boosting up the pride of the community. There has to be that effort at play as well, because there's a significant psychosocial impact that it's having on people. And so I really hope, as has been pointed out by Mr. Regis, that it has to be a holistic, integrated plan for crime prevention and for human development, because you're always going to have corruption, and so there's always going to be that risk of a corrupt police officer or a corrupt customs officer or a corrupt politician or banker. But then the system needs to have enough checks, and there need to be enough good people within the system to spot out, that corrupt person and to call them out. And so to achieve that, that's where we have to have a significant discussion as a nation, as a region, so that people can understand, and especially young men who are the ones who are being targeted the most by these gangs, that young men can understand, look, it may be cool for maybe 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. I can have the nice flashy vehicle. I can have the jewelry. I can go to all the parties. But then within that 5 years, I could very well end up in a body bag. I could very well end up in the ground. And they need to be able to see pathways away from that kind of life. I think they're seeing too many of those types of pathways, and we need to begin to show them pathways to other careers and other opportunities.
As you mentioned there, barrels and guns that are coming into barrels. In fact, we had a story. There was one Brand Nicholas who was accused in Grenada of not importing guns once but twice. I believe the gentleman has since been charged. Of course, everybody deserves to have their day in court. Again, these are still allegations until the court adjudicates on the matter. But he was accused by law enforcement officials in Grenada of importing guns. And in fact, I'm going to tee up an article here. Of course, the current Prime Minister of Grenada, Deacon Mitchell, who is also the head of the chair of the regional security mechanism right now. And he said that Grenada is under threat from the illegal importation of guns and ammunition. He said his administration will be adopting a zero tolerance approach to firearms in communities. He goes on to say, quote, "I want us to understand that our islands are under constant threat from the importation of small firearms in particular. They're coming in barrels, as you just said, colleagues. They're coming in containers, and don't be fooled. We are probably the last bastion of little or no gun violence in the region," unquote. He disclosed while addressing questions in a town hall meeting held this weekend. He also mentioned St. Lucia there, because St. Lucia is on the minds of Grenadians in the context of, if your neighbor's house is on fire, well, perhaps you need to wet yours. Yeah. And he also goes on to say, quote, "I'm not a fan of private people holding firearms." And that actually includes ex-police officers. That's a shot across the bow there to you, Mr. Regis. Then he goes on to say, let's see here. Ex-police. And so to me, I'm making this clear, and I hope that I can get support from my colleagues. I intend to take a zero tolerance approach to firearms in our communities, unquote. He's also the Minister of National Security in Grenada. But Mr. Regis, talk about that again, that diaspora piece with the importation of guns from the United States. Of course, Prime Minister Keith Rowley in Trinidad, at a public meeting 3 weeks ago, he actually called for CARICOM to sue American gun manufacturers for being one of the people responsible for the kinds of gun violence that we're seeing in the Caribbean as well. I do not know what jurisdiction they would have to sue gun manufacturers in the US or how that would work, but that's something that he did posit. Mr. Regis.
Well, rhetoric, as far as I'm concerned, that's rhetoric.
Okay.
That's just my opinion. Here's what it is. The US, yes, has a moral responsibility, if there's anything moral about the US and its responsibility to itself and others. My thing is, we have a responsibility to protect ourselves. We all talk about barrels, it's coming in on barrels, but what are the actions that we are taking? What do we need to invest in? Crime, gun violence is the greatest anxiety facing our nation at this time, and I would dare say neighboring countries. So have we shown that we are serious about tackling this thing? And in what ways have we shown that? What do we need to invest in? Do we need to invest in appropriate technology? Do we need to invest in other equipment, whatever it is, to deal with this issue? It makes no sense we belly aching about what the US has done and not done. History is littered with these circumstances when the US ought to have done, they didn't do. The US ought not to have done, that they did. That does not help us. And we need to stop this kind of playing victim role in this thing. We need to take up responsibility. We are getting barrels, guns coming in barrels and other things. Put the necessary infrastructure in place to stop that, or to at least mitigate, reduce these incidents. A lot of persons, we will do things if we believe we have a good enough chance to succeed. If we put things in place and to raise the stakes, to make it more difficult, then I'm sure that in itself, the whole credibility issue and will be a deterrent to some, but not to the criminal minds. Yes? So we need to do that. Now, the guns in the country, what is it that we need to do? Now, I know some people have spoken about if you have an amnesty, then, only the real fellas will not give the guns. Okay, but have we tried it? When I was commissioner, we had a program, and Khalid can bear me out on that we paid for the purchase, or if you want to call it purchase, but persons brought in guns and they were rewarded financially. And we picked up over 300 guns during that time. And we actually had the homicide rate going down, or steadying or going down for this year. Now you may say, oh, it's just a means of get it out of the road. So it has to be not a singular thing. You have a situation where you are stopping it at the borders, but at the same time, you're trying to reduce the amount on the road. We need to try that. We need to try those things. Quite obviously, we need to try new things because the old things have not worked or not worked effectively. So put initiatives in place where we can encourage people. Here's what it is. I handled, as I said, over a 3-year period, over 300 firearms. Not one person was ever compromised because we handled it with dignity and we've dealt with it confidentially. To the point that not only did we have persons bringing in firearms, but we developed human intelligence. There was one guy who collected over a period of time almost over $20,000 from me. And my office handled it personally. I was not allowing anybody. My staff officer was the one responsible for that. She is now an assistant commissioner. Yes. And we handled it that this guy would call in. He had a special number that he could call in within the office and says, look, if you all go by courts, the fellow in the red cap and the pink shirt and whatever it is, he has a firearm on it. We were able to do that. So we need to not only try to stop what's going on at the border, but how do we reduce the amounts that we have right now? And again, it calls for a multiplicity of initiatives, not one single initiative, right? So that needs to be done. That needs to be done immediately. The thing about firearms, I have military background as well as police background. I was SSC commander for a number of years. Because of my level of training, I'm very wary of firearms. Because you see, in this currently, every pussycat with a firearm believes he's a lion, and they get stupid. And that goes for both civilians and some police officers too. So it's about we don't want to give everybody. When last did you hear of any licensed firearm holder intervening in anything to stop a crime? My experience is most of them are eventually arrested for assaulting a friend or their spouse with this licensed firearm. Yeah. So, but I guess it gives people a sense of confidence. Most of the homicides we find of these bad boys, when the police gets on the scene, if somebody has not already taken their firearm, they would find a firearm on them, you know. Yeah. So possessing a firearm is no guarantee that you are going to get out of trouble. And Curly said something earlier. You spent 5 years, you went to this year. The fact that you have decided to change your life does not mean that somebody has changed their mind about you, you know. So you're a bad boy, and all of a sudden you decide that I am taking a new direction. Yes, but there are debts out there, and people are still want you dead. So people need to, again, I think there's need for character education. I think we need to rethink our academic-based curriculum. We are teaching children the relationship between concepts, but not relationship between people. And just yesterday, somebody was saying that the lack of vocational education in this country, it is much easier to find a lawyer than a good plumber. Yes? So again, we need to rethink a lot of things. Yes, it's a process, but I said in my previous program with you that even if we get a relief, because you have mosquitoes in your house right now and you use Bubb or whatever fish to kill them, unless we deal with this drum of stagnant water that is breeding mosquitoes, all we are doing is going around in circles. It's a revolving door. So
we have a saying in Grenada is like you spin in top in mud. That is an old colloquialism that we use. I'm sure you use it in St. Lucia as well. But what we want to do, we want to come up for air, gentlemen. We will take our final break of the day, and we would invite you for some closing comments. Again, thank you all for appearing on the Bubb Report, because again, you know, St. Lucia is one of our closest neighbors in the Windward Islands. And folks, of course, like Trinidad and Tobago's had a long-standing crime issue, but the character of St. Lucia is so much similar to Grenada. And folks, obviously in Grenada, are concerned about the nature of crime in St. Lucia in the ways that can have spill-off effects in Grenada as well. So we thought it was important to hear so that you guys can give some very good context to what is happening over there. So please stand by. We'll be right back for the closing comments of the day. Hi, everyone. Thanks for checking out the Bubb Report's social media pages. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch our weekly live show, follow our Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram pages, and also subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can catch repeat episodes on Wednesdays at 4 and 5 p.m. respectively on CRFM Radio and GBN TV in Grenada. We are also viewed on Sundays at 8 p.m. on WPG10 throughout the Caribbean. Thanks for watching. And viewers and listeners, welcome back. What we want to do now is to offer our esteemed guests an opportunity for closing comments. Mr. Regis, I want to, again, before I get to closing comments from you, have you been I guess, drafted or mobilized by the administration to provide advice by your former colleagues? Or are you happily retired and you're just interested in enjoying your retirement? Where are you now?
No, I'm retired, but I'm not expired. So I think I still have a little something left in me.
Okay.
I was just engaged by the Minister of Education to deal with a consultancy dealing with school security, and it's, although much has been said, but essentially what it is to look at individual schools, do a security assessment, come up with findings and recommendations for the future. So that's where I'm at. But at the national security level, I am still awaiting that call, should there be one.
Okay, all right. Mr. George, let's get to you for some closing comments, sir.
Well, thanks very much, Dr. Bubb. And I really have to commend you first and foremost for what you're doing. I think it's really important for Grenada, and understanding the issue across the Caribbean. So This is very much a very welcome step, and we do need these types of dialogues. So I really hope that we can continue to have those types of dialogues across the Caribbean. In terms of the situation at play in St. Lucia, there will be no quick fix. That's the hard reality of it. Government has to realize that its first interest is the maintenance of law and order, and that has to be taken exceedingly seriously. I think we have to take a public health approach towards crime. I think we have to take a technological and innovative approach towards crime prevention and dealing with it. You can't just be doing the same things and expecting the same results, a different result. So I really hope that there is going to be a multidisciplinary approach towards it. Let's not put it all about the police. There's a lot of different actors, a lot of different gears that need to be turning in tandem, well-oiled to make it happen. The justice system, as has been pointed out, has been underfunded. It's a significant problem. Access to justice is still a major issue. Getting the police going, the resources of the Crown Prosecution Service and the DPP are also very important in this context. There have been efforts at play over the years in terms of, we have a forensic lab that's been operating. I know there have been efforts in terms of trying to equip the police more, but there definitely cannot be enough of that. And so it has to be smart. The investments have to be smart. And we're going to have to look at whatever assistance we can get to be able to deal with it. But if we want the long-term solution, we have to deal with what drives crime. And from all indications, crime is about inequality, and in particular, inequality amongst men. And I think we have not been doing enough in terms of dealing with young men and looking at their outcomes. And that is where I think there has to be a significant approach in the Caribbean. We're getting lots of support from, and of course that's because of the SDGs and looking at gender issues, looking at women and promoting them. But in the Caribbean context, we have an issue with our males, and that needs to be tackled because we're clearly seeing now some of the unfortunate impacts of that. So it's a social phenomenon. It's a public health phenomenon, and we need to tackle it in that way. The abatement, which I hope is going to come, is important, but in terms of the sustainability of our efforts, that is where we certainly have to make a change in terms of some of our long-term thinking, as well as our actions in a multiplicity of sectors: education, housing, social care. It's all needed to deal with this situation.
Mr. George, thank you so much. Mr. Regis, over to you for some closing comments.
Okay, I'll just my comments would be more or less to complement what Mr. George has said.
Yeah.
He said quite a few things, and I think we can tie all of this up by saying we need a national security approach. We are doing a lot of things in silos. We are doing a lot of things off the cuff, responding to things as they come along. We need to, have that plan that would be not only in the minds of the executive or in the minds of the police. We need every citizen on board. This is the plan. This is how we're going to achieve it. Yes, minus the tactical things that we need to keep on the wraps, but I think it is, if we want to have an effective plan and we need to have buy-in on those plans, I think everybody should have an opportunity to participate and say, these are our anxieties, these are the priorities, the things about the school, the education system, the divestment of the economy, the parenting, all of those different things. Of course, the issues with local and transnational crime. But we need to have a blueprint that we can move forward, yes, so that this concept of every 5 years we reboot and we start again, we will never get to the second floor if every time the administration changes. There is a total rethink, a redo And the favorite phrase in my experience for killing any program is that we are reviewing it. Yes, and it's dead. It happens throughout the Caribbean with the politics, and both parties, all the parties are guilty of this. This thing is too important. We need to take a national approach so that we all know what we're doing. We know who's responsible for what. We can hold people accountable. We can be responsible as a people. This thing is too important. This is too important. And yes, we talk about the effect on the economy, our tourism and so on, but first and foremost, it's about our lives, our very lives, and the quality of our lives. So I'm pleading on the authorities, not only St. Lucia, but Grenada. You know where we are at. We know what we did and what we didn't do. And I don't want you to slip into this, into that rabbit hole that we found ourselves in. You need to keep on upholding the social values, your traditional social values. I think one of the reasons why Grenada is where it's at, because you have kept strong social values. I don't think it's because you have a stronger police force than the rest of the Caribbean that your numbers are down. I think it is because of that social responsibility, yes, and the strong family values and social norms. So don't go the way of sometimes we want to be Americanized or that sort of thing, and all this thing now. Everybody's walking around with sagging pants and this and that and the other, and rights and rights and rights. I have nothing against that. I believe in.
So, Baba, and you're saying those time-honored, collectivist values,
the things
taking
that
a village,
yes.
taking a village, and that's what. Yes.
So that is, if you're still at that time where you can afford to do that and don't engage in interventional measures as we are trying to do that, because that is the water that you need to wet your beard with at this point in time.
Mr. Regis, thank you. I know that my producer, Rion Charles, said you had to go to another location, so I do apologize if I took away from your Sunday
No.
routine. I hope it wasn't too far.
It's all worth the cost. It's
Yes.
worth it. And I wouldn't want to miss that. I wouldn't want to miss it for anything, because I still have something to offer.
Yes.
And I'd rather have.
Oh no, you have a wealth of knowledge as a former law enforcement officer, but not only as a former law enforcement officer. I don't know if you're a dad. Are you a dad? Are you a parent?
I am.
As a parent, as an uncle, as an elder statesman.
As an educator,
not to take anything away from you, Mr. George, but as an educator, the last time you were on the program, we got very, very positive feedback in respect of your comments on these issues, and people are listening. So I want to really, really thank you for coming on the program.
You're most welcome, and feel free anytime.
Yes,
and if I may
absolutely.
quickly add, Dr. Bubb,
Yes.
I really hope that his skills are utilized by the current administration. He really should be coming in as a sort of a national security advisor,
Yes.
in terms of giving context and advice at this very, very critical time.
And as Mr. Regis said, you're retired, but you're not expired, right?
That's right. I love that one.
But one of the things I must say, my experience in this country, and I'm not talking about this administration or the other.
Yes.
Unsolicited advice is seen as interference. So sometimes we are very careful what we say and to whom we say it. But I'm hoping that this can change given the situation that we're in right now.
Absolutely. Viewers and listeners, gentlemen, thank you again for appearing on the Bubb Report. Viewers and listeners, as a reminder, you can catch the repeat episode of this program on WPG10 television this evening at 8 p.m. and on the Grenada Broadcasting Network's channel in Grenada on Wednesday at 5 p.m. and on CRFM radio as well on Wednesday at 4 p.m. On behalf of the hardworking producers of the Bubb Report, I am your humble servant, Kellen Bubb. Thank you for joining us, and we're signing off now. Take care. Bye-bye.